coming in to get himself settled down on his seat. He's known, I think, to a good few of you. There's been some conversations already about places you've heard him play. Very well-known figure in Scottish music, accordion playing and Ghillies and social life. Before we hand over to Freeland, can I just tell you that after this concert today, there's going to be a talk from Freeland at 2:30 upstairs in the Gifford room on free reed instruments the like of this in Scottish traditional music, so that will be running from 2:30 this afternoon. Other concerts to look out for this week. This Sunday at 4:30 in the afternoon in Holy Trinity Church, St Andrew's Chamber Orchestra with the Fitzwilliam String Quartet and James Eastaway on the oboe are going to be giving a concert with Vivaldi Magnificat, Mozart Symphony No. 41 Jupiter, and you'll all know where Holy Trinity Church is, so please come along and support that as well. But without any further ado, thank you very much to Freeland. We're in for a real treat. Flyers about this lovely book are available afterwards. If you haven't got one, go and get one.
Thank you very much indeed. It's lovely to be here. I don't really need this microphone to address you, but it's required for the streaming. Oh, there he goes. As Jane said, my name's Freeland Barbour. I've spent an awful lot of my life travelling the length and breadth of Scotland, all around the islands, the north of England, and many places further afield, playing concerts, but mainly playing for dancing. I'm not going to play a lot of dance music tonight because it's obviously has to be repetitive. It's for dancers. It's not. Some people like listening to it for ages, but I prefer to play something else in a concert. The book, The Music and the Land, was published in 2015, and the idea very much was to reflect the influences and inspiration that I'd got from all the different places, the different people that I'd met and seen in my travels. And one of the great things about playing for dancing is that you meet lots of people. You talk to them while you're playing. especially in the old village halls when they were about 3 inches from your nose. And that allows you to get to know people. You make friends all over the place. And I have always written music, whether it be to reflect my own emotions or just as a tribute to a particular person. And the first thing I'm going to play, well, I was asked actually when we came in the door just now by a lovely couple that I've known for a long time, Lorna and Mary McIntyre from Glasgow, if I would play a tune called The Ornithologist, which is a dance tune. And I will. It was written for a man called Bobby Tulloch. I used to go on cruise trips with the National Trust for Scotland. I did about 20. And Bobby did too. In fact, on the old school ship, the Uganda, we were all in dormitories, and there would be staff as well as 1,100 passengers. And I was there to play for the dancing, help in the Ghillies, and just generally be a dog's body, which was great. And I was in the top bunk in one of this particular part of the Nansen dormitory, and underneath me was Bobby Tulloch. And Bobby was the RSPB warden in Shetland. He was incredibly world-famous ornithologist, as well as being, like all true Shetlanders, a man of many parts. He was a great photographer. And indeed, the pictures there, which come from the book, show you, I think Bobby's down in the right-hand corner in his younger days, but they're all his pictures. He was a fisherman. He was also a first-class musician, a really good musician. He was an accordionist with the Islesborough Band in the 1950s, in there with the great Tom Anderson, who was the big man of Shetland fiddle music. He revived it almost single-handed, taught people like Ali Bain, and Bobby was his equal. So I wrote him a tune, but I was way too shy because I was nothing and he was the big man, and I thought, I can't call it the Bobby Tulloch two-step because he might hate it. So I called it The Ornithologist, and it has the subtitle, the Bobby Tulloch two-step. It's a two-step. That's the national dance of Shetland still, a Boston two-step or a military two-step. There's a lovely space here, and if you want to dance, I'd be delighted, because that's what it's for. But if you prefer to sit and eat your lunch, do that as well. Do please. time is, sorry, streamers, one and all. Time is shorter than I thought. So we're not, the next photograph is in Orkney, but we aren't going to stop there. I'd love to, but had lots of lovely times there, but we're not going to stop there. And we aren't going to stop in the Western Isles either, because it takes a long time to get there and a long time to get back, especially with Calmac, the way it is. We're going to go to a mixture of the north, which comes down to Inverness, and in Aberdeenshire. I asked well-known people, friends of mine, well-known in the traditional music world mostly, but not entirely, to write the chapter introductions, either to talk about my music if they felt so inclined, but really more to talk about the area and what they thought of it. The Fife chapter, which we were skating past, the introduction was done by Rab Noakes, the well-known folk singer who died quite recently, actually. And he spoke about his life growing up in St Andrews and his finding of folk song. So I was really pleased with that. We're going to go to a mixture. I'm going to play you 3 tunes. The first is a jig and the next 2 are reels. And the first tune is a tune called Hardy's Triumph. I wrote it for Ian Hardy, who was a very old friend of mine. And the Triumph was not an old motorcycle or a car. It was the fact that Ian managed to record this about 3 weeks before he died of a brain tumour, which was an incredible achievement and sums the man up. So Hardy's Triumph. And then in the I think about 1978, the band I played with, the Wallochmor Ceilidh Band, we were guests at the Keith Folk Festival, which was a big thing then. And after the late night dance, some of us went off to a late night party, as you do. And when we'd had enough of that, myself and our drummer, Gus Miller, headed back to the hotel to find that it was completely locked and we couldn't get in. Went back to the party, it had finished it, everything was locked. Went back into the middle of Keith, then it started to pour with rain, and the only place to take shelter was a telephone box. And I can tell you, if you're stuck in a telephone box with Gus Miller, who used to be the postmaster at King's Kettle, actually, but if you're stuck in a telephone box with Gus Miller, the only thing to do is write a tune. So I did. And then I'm going to finish off with my tribute to a wonderful man of the Northeast, Charlie Allen. Charlie was a farmer at Little Ardo, but he was far more than that. He was a college lecturer. He was a journalist, a radio journalist. He and I were colleagues together at the BBC in Beechgrove in Aberdeen in the 1980s. He was a bundle of laughs, and perhaps his biggest claim to fame was that in his youth he had been a competitor at the Highland Games, and he was for a while the world caber tossing champion. As you know, at the Highland Games, if you take part in the heavy events, you have to wear a kilt. But Charlie took this to be that you had to wear a kilt whatever event you were in. And he was incredibly popular when he took part in the high jump. we're going to go to Perthshire now, where I come from. I was brought up in a place called Glen Fincastle, just northwest of Pitlochry on the road to Wallochmor. And on my father's side, our family have lived there for a very, very long time indeed. It means a lot to me, as you can imagine. First of all, though, I'm going to play a very short tune, which I wrote for somebody else who it meant a lot to. He and I grew up together in Glen Fincastle. His name was Matthew Stogden. His father was the inspector of lifeboats for Scotland and decided that he wouldn't be anywhere near the sea. He'd be right in the middle, so it was an equal distance to go to any lifeboat, so nobody could accuse him of favouritism. But the result was that he was always late for everything. Matthew went to Croatia to work after the war as an aid worker, and he and two friends were walking home. This is a very dismal story, I do apologise. They were knocked into by a drunk driver and Matthew was killed. So I wrote a lament. His gravestone is in Glen Fincastle, and I wrote a lament for him. It's called Am Ballach and Siúlach, the roving boy. On we go with an air called Tummel's Side, self-explanatory, and then a slow Strathspey. Strathspey country is really a bit further north-east, up in Strathspey, but we heard plenty in Perthshire when I was growing up. So it's a slow Strathspey called Old Fincastle. This is the name of a house in one of those pictures where my grandparents, my parents, and my mother still stays there. Very old house. Thank you very much. The Music and the Land, the book goes on with chapters in Angus and in Fife, as I said, and in Glasgow, and then it goes to the west. And I'm going to go to the island of Colonsay and the linked Isle of Oronsay. Now, the picture, I think, shows Iona Abbey. I was going to play a tune that I wrote on the ferry. I used to work at Iona Abbey long, long time ago, but I've changed my mind. I'm going to do what is essentially a Gaelic-style waltz. It was for a birthday party I was asked to write a tune for. It was for a friend of mine who was well known in the Gaelic world, Mary Carmichael, who was a museums officer in Skye and Lochhalshand, whose family came from Colonsay, and she's a deaconess in the church, and I wanted to combine the two elements of the Gaelic background and the church background in a tune, which is called Cialavora, Mary's Chapel, which is a ruin as part of the abbey ruins on the island of Oronsay. We're going to go to Edinburgh now, where I have lived off and on for a very long time, and 2 strathspeys and a jig. And I wanted to, in writing the tunes, wanted to reflect more of the classical, the late 18th, early 19th century fiddle music of Scotland, and particularly as heard in Edinburgh at that time. Back in the 1960s, a very colourful accountant by the name of Pip Hills. It's a bit odd, the idea of a colourful accountant, isn't it? I can say that because my wife, Shelley, she's here today and she's an accountant. Pip Hills decided that he'd had enough of drinking malt whisky as produced by the big companies, and he wanted to lay down his own casks in distilleries of his choice and drink them unchilled and generally as it should be. And he and a bunch of friends, including my father-in-law, the late John P. McIntosh, they got together, they laid the whisky down and they let it mature, and then they drank it with tremendous results, I may say. and a society was formed, and they still have their rooms down in the vaults in Giles Street in Leith. So clearly a strathspey was needed to mark this occasion. And then the second strathspey is called Miss Meanie Trotter of Morton Hall. Now, we lived around Morton Hall for a long time, and the author, James Robertson, some years ago wrote a book called 365, and he wrote vignettes, short pieces for every day of the year. And one of them concerned this wonderful lady from the late 18th century, highly eccentric, called Meanie Trotter of Morton Hall. And at the end of the vignette, he suggested that he didn't think a tune had been written in her honour, and wasn't it about time to do something about it? Over to you, Mr. Barbour, he said at the end. And I thought, well, heck, I better do something about this. And did the tune, presented it to James, and he'd completely forgotten about it. And then Will, after that, I might need to rack my memory to, oh yeah, I know what I'm going to do. A chap called Birlinn, who I knew well, he and his wife were great dancers, and his wife Elizabeth, Bill wanted to have a tune for her birthday. I think it was her 50th. So Mrs. Elizabeth Innes came into being, a sort of more of an older style jig. Speedily, we're going from Edinburgh to East Lothian. That's the next chapter, 2 quick tunes. The first was for one of my grandmothers, Helen Scott. She was brought up at Humby. So Helen Scott of Humby came into being, and I was really thrilled when other people took it up and played it. And secondly, a tune that meant a lot to me and still does. I wrote it for for my late father-in-law, John McIntosh. He was MP for Berwick and East Lothian, Professor of Politics at Edinburgh University, and he died at the tragically early age of 48. He was a big figure in Scotland, in Scottish thought and Scottish politics, and his funeral at Gifford was quite extraordinary. There's Gifford Kirk for you there, where we were married as well, in fact. John was Labour, but he could have been anything. He was unique. And I have never seen so many people coming. Busloads came. Police had to stop all the traffic in all the surrounding roads. We don't know how many people were there. And I wrote a pipe tune called John P. McIntosh, of course. And I can't tell you how much it meant to me when it was played at that occasion. So Helen Scott of Humby, first of all, and then John P. McIntosh. I do have a chapter about the Battle of Killiecrankie, going back to Perthshire very briefly. I was asked to write some music for the tercentenary of the battle, but I don't think we've really got time for that, so that will have to be put in a draw. I'm heading south now into Northumberland and Cumbria, and lovely part of the world. I've played in virtually every village hall, I think, in Northumberland over the years, and they were great ones for traditional music of all kinds and dancing. And I'd like to play a couple of pieces that reflect what their sort of favourite type of things down there, or used to be anyway. The first is a hornpipe. Their particular dance is called the Drops of Brandy. It's a version of Strip the Willow, and they dance it with a lovely Northumbrian rant step, which, when it's done well, is fantastic. When it's done badly, it's not quite so good. And a gentleman who used to run dances in the area for us, called Bob Herdman from Rothbury, he used to run dances at Whittingham, so I wrote him a tune, the Whittingham Rant, and then we'll follow it with a dance that was very popular down in that part of the world, and that's where I first encountered it. It's called the Swedish Masquerade. It's not Northumbrian, and it's not actually Swedish, it's Danish, and it's the Danes actually making fun of the pompous Swedes in a dance. I, again, named the three little tunes for well-known people in the traditional music world down there. Ian and Ursula Murray from Rothbury, Harry and Nancy Watson from Park Style in Haydenbridge. They ran the local garage, and they raised tens of thousands of pounds for charities with their charity Ghillies that they used to put on. Wonderful people. And finally, Bob and Ann Robson of Rayhuch. And Rayhuch is a farm near Belford, and the Robson family over the generations have been farming this farm. They're tenants of the Duke of Northumberland and have been since 1746, and they're still running it now. That's some record, isn't it? Deserves a tune much better than I could ever write. Off and on for a number of years, I played in a Scandinavian band. There's an awful lot of links between traditional music of the British Isles, and I don't just mean Scotland and Ireland, I mean Wales and England and Scandinavian music generally. And Spellemenniner was based in Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands, And there were members from Tórshavn, Faroese, there were Danes, there was Swedes, there were folk from New England in the States, and me from Scotland. And we had wonderful trips in various places. And one of the dances that we did, concerts and dances, and one of the dances we played for and was very popular was a dance called the Rhinelander. It's a couple dance, and it's German, obviously, by its name. And it requires a particular style of tune. And on one gorgeous sunny day on the Lofoten Islands, up in the Arctic Circle off the coast of Norway, I had nothing to do, and I tried to write a Rhinelander. I was in the village, the town of Kvalnes, and so the Kvalnes Rhinelander came into being. And again, I was a bit wondering if I'd actually got it right, but I had a friend in Norwegian radio back from my BBC days, Sven Nyhus, and Sven, I sent it to him. He's a great fiddler, and if you ever want to hear authentic Norwegian fiddling, Sven Nyhus is the man. And I sent it to him to see if it would pass muster, and he recorded it, so something was right. Anyway, here we go, the Kvalnes Rhinelander. For inviting me. Thank you very much for staying. When I saw the list of these concerts here, I thought, oh, there's been some mistake. This is a classical series with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra coming and all sorts of distinguished people. But I thought, well, what the heck? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So here I am. And it's been fun, so thanks again. I'm going to finish off with a little poem, actually. And There was an American cartoonist called Gary Larson, and he had a cartoon strip called The Far Side, and some of you may remember it. Anyway, there was one particular cartoon that he did, which kind of caught the music fraternity's ear, and it involved St. Peter and the devil, Old Nick. And so I thought I would turn this into a Scots poem. It's called Destiny. Auld Nick was dirlin doon in hell, bent double on his knees, and wi' his bellows in his hand was blawing up a bleeze. Just then there came a knocking sound above the furnace roar. "Oh, jings," he muttered to himself, "wha's chapping at my door?" So up he got wi' creak and groan and mony a curse and jibe, and flung back all the locks and bolts and opened the door wide. A stranger lad stood on the step, a paper in his fist, and firmly with his other hand he held a muckle kist. "Weel, weel," cried Nick, "what's a' this then, this rapping at my gate? What's your will, my lad," says he. "Come on now, dinna be late." "Through all my days," the stranger said, "I've travelled far and wide, and no matter whar I gaed, this kist was by my side. Frae Berwick up to John O'Groats and down the western side, frae Aberdeen to Dumfriestown, frae Murrayfirth to Clyde. And then my days on earth were done, and up to heaven I came, and there, behind the pearly gates, St. Peter checked my name. It wasn't on his list at all, which caused him some concern, until his gaze fell on my kist, and his brows grew bleak and stern. "You'll never get in wi' that," says he, and pointed to a sign that hung down frae the gate post there. "Harps only" was the rhyme. But Peter's no a bad lad, and he hides what he can. "There's no a chance in here," says he, "but I hae another plan. So dinna be despondent, son. There is another place. I ken the lad that runs it, and you'll maybe get a space." "I'll gie directions," Peter said, and to show just what he meant, he quickly pulled his iPad out. Google Maps was his intent. But he couldn't mind the postcode, though he did his best, I'm sure. "It's been a trochel getting here. I'm glad to see your door." When Nick had heard this tale, he smiled, and off he sicht to tell. "You're welcome here, my lad," says he. "Come in and warm yourself. And later on, when lamps are lit and nicht is drawing on, brack out your kist and gies a tune on your accordion." You're very kind. Well, seeing as she's here, I better play a tune that I wrote for my wife, for Shelley. It's called In the Lamplight. It comes from a suite that I did called Winter's Journey. I pinched the title from somebody called Mr. Schubert. And it's a mixture of pieces and ad-lib sort of bits of music. Recorded at my studio in East Lothian on a very cold winter, when just after the bank crash, when we didn't have any work. Or was it before that? But it was some crisis had occurred anyway, and there was nothing else to do.